Ta-da!
How does it feel to hold that?
I'm telling you, it's incredible because at this day and age, to get a vinyl record is amazing. Also, in this day and age, and at my age, it's amazing to have a record deal.
Fair enough.
With an actual label that wants to promote it. And when I was a little girl, we made our one and only family trip to see my uncle in Estes Park, Colorado Springs, Colorado. Mm. And he played in a band, a cowboy band.
Okay.
I still have his album.
Okay.
And now we can add this family album to my Uncle Bill.
So now you're having a nice family collection.
Yeah.
It sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of touches upon something that I want to start with, because I think this whole path to this album started around 2017, and you've been working on it the past couple of years, and then preparing to tour and all that stuff that kind of comes with it, and then this kind of pandemic happened. So
yeah. Not only that, the official launch of the album in Europe took place on Friday.
Oh, really?
The 13th.
So it was almost written in the stars in a way.
I know. It's crazy.
No, but so how are you kind of coping with the idea that things are a little bit different now?
Oh gosh, basically I'm just doing the simple things, focusing on the ordinary, simple, everyday things, cooking a nice meal, watching a movie, reading a book. And lately I signed myself a project. I call it the Inspiration Wall.
Okay.
And my idea is to get a big piece of poster board to put on my door. Mm. And I've been researching wonderful things that people say, either my family or friends, quotes, and I'm going to put them all on my inspiration wall. Okay. And I journal every morning. Mm. So as I was going back through my journal to find things, I saw some of my notes from the recording of the album. And one of the days, all it says is, "Fabulous day at Royal Studios, did not write in here." It was so good. I just, so it's nice to go back and revisit and make those travels at a time when we travel.
Well, because, we'll get to the travels that you did for the album in a little bit, but having those kind of positive reminders, especially in a time like this, kind of, how important is that to kind of not get bogged down with the thought that, well, the release isn't going as I expected it to be, and that kind of stuff.
Right. I think it's important. And just the other morning, I woke up and I sat down first thing, and I took Post-it notes, and I wrote the word love and colored in and placed it all around the apartment to remind myself of what's the most important thing, And so I think it's all right. It's a shame that we couldn't do all. I was thrilled about the idea of performing at Memphis in May with the original band that recorded on the album for the Royal Studios sessions, for instance, the high rhythm section. Those guys were all set to back me in Memphis. Yeah.
You just froze for a second, but you're good now.
Okay.
I'm not sure how good the internet connection over here is, because I'm way upstairs somewhere.
Okay.
We'll manage it, but kind of that you mentioned that love, both love and inspiration. So let's kind of start in the beginning then, because I read somewhere that you grew up on Elvis in the Church, but then it was the Blues Brothers and then kind of Etta James around the same time that kind of first got you into the soul and blues type of music.
Right.
And what was it about this music that struck a chord with you?
Well, I think one of the first things, if I had to analyze it, is that the unifying element in all of this is my love of what we call Black gospel. And I didn't know what that was. But when I heard people on the radio like Gladys Knight singing Midnight Train to Georgia, what I was hearing was her influences from the church, from the Black church. And growing up in South Mississippi, I didn't have any entree into that world.
Right.
It's unfamiliar to me. But I think that innately, in my DNA or my makeup somehow. I just responded to that in the music. I think people in the world, when we talk about music, they fall into two camps, essentially. There's the back of the beat, and there's the front of the beat. And then all the different kinds of music that go with that. And for me, it's always been the back of the beat.
Right.
So I think that has a lot to do with it. Plus, when you realize, or when I realized that Elvis, the biggest thing in our world growing up musically, the biggest thing in Mississippi was Elvis. And my mom was a humongous fan. I didn't realize that the way he was singing at that time was influenced by the Black gospel that he loved. So again, I will say that's the element, that's the thread. And it's my hope that in the future I can pay homage to my gospel background, which is a little bit different, because I still have the hymnal from our family church in Mississippi that belonged to my great grandmother, Missouri Hudson Davis. He played piano out of that book with shape notes, and it's my dream to also do an album of those songs in the future. I think it would be fun to bring in the other gospel elements into my past. Because to me, now I look back on that and I think we sounded like, I don't know, Appalachian. You know what I mean?
Yeah, fair. Of course.
And we'll have a little talk with Jesus,
But one thing I find interesting about that, because obviously I'm not American, I didn't grow up down south. So when you grew up listening to Elvis, did people listen to Little Richard and those type of artists kind of along the same lines, or was it just mostly Elvis and then later you only discovered people like Little Richard?
Me or people in general?
Well, both in a way. Did you know about Little Richard in a way?
In general, from what I remember of my early childhood, Elvis really was the most obvious connection. But the last album I did before this was a tribute to my late mother based on a notebook I found in her belongings where she had written down the lyrics to all these country songs that she loved. And when I started doing research for the project, I found that a lot of these country artists were what you might call blue-eyed soul. They had been influenced. And when they did certain versions of songs, or even, for instance, a little Willie John song that I covered, Big Blue Diamonds. That's soulful. That is so soulful.
Sure.
Country, but it's soulful. So it was happening without me really realizing it. And, the South is such a melting pot of things that I never even knew about. I mean, I didn't know that from New Orleans, from Louisiana, there was the Creole, and there was the Haitian, and there was all the other things. I just knew it was New Orleans, and that's where we had gumbo, and that's where my papa was from. My dad was born in New Orleans. But it's really great to travel now and meet other people who are interested and actually learn more about it myself.
And then that's the fun thing, because you now have to get these cities right. You went to Memphis, you went to Jackson, Mississippi, and you went to Most Shoals, Alabama.
Yep.
So kind of that traveling, I don't know if you've ever been there before, but what is it like kind of in the region that you grew up in to kind of make these discoveries about the people that lived there, the music that was made there?
Right. Let me just tell you something. When I was a kid, growing up in South Mississippi, to me, when somebody mentioned Tennessee or Virginia or North Carolina or any of those states, in my mind as a Southerner, they were way up there. I didn't even think. And this is just my ignorance. I mean, just as a kid, I didn't even think about them being part of the South. We were so insulated. It was such a small community that it wasn't until I released my album, Tempered in Fire, and got some reviews where people said, "Oh, Memphis." I thought, I get some way I must have been influenced, but I didn't know it. I'd never been to Memphis. When we were on that musical road trip, two things happened to me that had never happened before. I went to Fame Studios. I've never been there before.
Right.
I went to, oh God, I'm going blank right now. Malaco.
Yeah.
Malaco in Jackson. I'd never been to Malaco Records, and I know people who've recorded there, have friends who used to be signed with them. So it was eye-opening, and what an opportunity to. So it's all looping around,
When you hear of these places, like Muscle Shoals is one that sticks out for me because I did see that documentary about Muscle Shoals, and that's kind of the music that I'm into as well. So, when they talk about this air kind of in being there, there's this energy being there. Did you feel that?
I did. Yeah, I did. In the studios, in the famed studios, and all the pictures on the walls. And then at one point during the recording, I was really tired. The fire alarm had gone off at the hotel at like 5 a.m. the morning of the sessions. So I was exhausted. and they let me go into the little room, in the back. And it was like, don't take any pictures. And I was in there in the cocoon and just thinking about all the things, all the magic that had happened. It was amazing, just amazing.
And when you were there, were you there kind of with the express idea of recording certain songs? Because I know Tell Mama by Etta James was recorded there. So was that why you were there, or was it more of a mix and match type?
No, it was a plan.
Okay.
My producer, Fred Mullen, genius of a producer, brilliant. I was touring over in Europe when he sent me the information about this, and we were working on the song list. And so what we did was we went to each of those studios and researched who recorded what at each studio. And, then we would debate, and we had little emails going back and forth where he would give it 5 stars, I would give it 4, give and take and say, which one? And then, no, that one's out. And so before we went to any of these studios, we already had a list of songs. Now, not every song made it on the record, obviously. We just didn't have time or didn't have room to put them all on there. But yeah, we had a plan.
Were you looking for anything in particular in those selection of songs?
They had to be recorded at those studios.
Okay.
And they had to be songs that we both loved. Geez, I closed the door here, so there was no sound, and now I'm hot.
Well, can you give me the kind of one song that immediately came to your mind that you thought, well, that song has to be on there? The kind of the first one that you were sure of?
Oh gosh, there's so many of those. I mean, when he first introduced the list and we talked about ideas, I just kept going, oh, that one, that one. I love that one. Right now I cannot think. I know that when we made the trip to Sun Records to do the one song, that was a definite, because it was such a part of the history of the place, the prisoners walking in the rain. I tell you one that I was dead set on doing, because I'm a huge fan of Bobby Blue Bland. Okay. I had to do Members Only. I have loved that song for so long. And of course, Anything in the World by Otis Redding. And one of the previously undiscovered songs for me on the record was Same Time, Same Place.
I wrote down next to all of the songs, most of the songs I could find who it was by, and some of them I knew, some of I didn't. Same Time, Same Place, I couldn't really figure out which one that was. So,
well, to give you a little background, once I discovered that song and the artist, I realized later that for years and years and years, I had loved this one song by that artist, but I didn't know it was by that artist because I heard Wright do it.
Right. And I have that with a couple of songs, because even someone else is stepping in. I know that song by Buddy Guy, but I'm not sure if he's the first one to kind of do that song.
Oh no, it's a ZZ Hill song.
Right.
Mississippi, yeah. Isn't that funny how you learn the history and who did what?
No, but it's interesting how this tradition, in a sense, keeps being I don't know what the right word is, being kept alive in that way, and then that there's no. I mean, it's just about the music, and so for you, when you pick these songs, do you think about the vocal melodies, and because obviously you can sing quite well, is that a decision in which songs you pick, or is it more like I can sing what I want, so I'm just going to pick the songs I like?
Okay, let me see if I understand what you're saying.
Well, I'm saying if kind of the vocal lines in the song have anything to do with why you picked the song in a way.
I think for me as a singer, it's important to pick a song that I can inhabit, that I can believe and experience the song. And if there's something about the song that I just can't agree with, or it doesn't fit me, I can't sing it.
Right.
It's not a technical thing.
Okay.
It's an emotional thing. Because for me, the most important thing that I want people to get from my performances as a singer or interpreter of songs is that they believe me. The only way they can believe me is if I believe it myself.
Right. So you just mentioned Bobby Blue Bland. So members only. What was it about that song that captivated you?
Oh gosh, so much about it. I think being an introvert, and when I was growing up, being an idealistic person, artistic, introverted, kind of quiet, there was a lot of chaos in my early life when my mom and dad divorced and he left, and my mom started working all the time, and we switched schools from the second grade up till the seventh grade. I was in different schools a lot of times, more than 2 times a year. And I never quite felt like I fit in or knew how to interact with my peers. I didn't learn those skills very well. And I spent a lot of time in my imagination, in nature, and making up songs and drawing pictures. And so I think in the song Members Only, when a person feels like they don't belong anywhere, that's what that song speaks to me about.
Right.
It makes me feel for other people who might be experiencing the same feelings, and it allows me to express that experience. Oh my God, it's such a spiritual, soulful song. And it's universal. It doesn't, red or yellow, black or white.
Sure.
The way you feel inside, the emotions, the song.
Sure. And you mentioned earlier on that you journal. So is music a way of kind of similar to journaling, a way of kind of getting these thoughts out of your mind and kind of dealing with certain things?
I've always written down my thoughts in some way or another throughout my life. My mom, as we found later when I discovered her notebook, always kept a diary or a journal. Okay, so there was the example of that. But I think what genuinely started me on the road to doing it consistently was back in 2005. I read and did this book called The Artist Way.
Okay.
Heard of it?
No, I haven't.
It's a self-help thing for creative people.
Okay.
So discover their creativity. And one of the elements of the book is to do this journal every morning. No matter what's in your head, just to empty your head. Because what I find when I do write songs is that it's not a matter of putting things in your head so that, I got to grab this and create a song. It's about releasing your mind so that you can connect all of the influences and ideas and thoughts and feelings that are already there. Because you're as an artist, you're always collecting experiences and ideas and words and what you really need is to clear the head so you can accept it. It's almost like a religious experience. Preacher's telling you, just open your mind. Let it come.
maybe this is a bad analogy, but one thing I read about you working with Fred is that he kind of allows you to, because he is such a producer, that he allowed you to not worry about anything else but what's right in front of you and do that thing. So is that kind of a similar thing where you weren't overstimulated and you could just focus on singing?
I think it's similar. It's not exactly the same.
Right.
His idea was, and I think it was a great idea, is that before we went in the studio, I only listened to the songs that we were going to do. Okay. That's brilliant, isn't it?
Sure.
And so I became, in fact, it became such a part of me that even today, a lot of times I'll wake up and some of these songs are in my head. And if I go back and show you my journal, you'll see little lines, it just interspersed in my journal. So I think it's a little bit like, zebras that bond with their baby. Once you know those stripes, hey.
Well, let's get into a couple more songs then, because obviously, we mentioned Etta James and then Tell Mama and I'd Rather Be Blind. And to me, I'm not a singer, but is there any hesitation of tackling that kind of song?
Good question. Because when Fred and I were discussing those particular songs, I was hesitant. Oh, I said, Fred, it's a great song. Like, I'd rather go blind, but it's been done so many times, and it's one of those songs that, although it's classic, it's beautiful, it's timeless. When you hear so many people do it, it kind of takes away a little bit. And I'm such a huge fan of Etta James that I didn't know that I could bring my own truth to that song. And how we managed to make it work is, first of all, we changed the arrangement, changed the tempo, and Fred played a version by the person, and I'm sorry to say I can't remember who it is, a male who had actually played that first, before Etta James.
Okay.
So Etta heard this guy do it, and so what we did was we went back to his version, and we took cues from that. And it's a one-take song, by the way. That's not completely a one-take. And it was at the end of that long day when the fire alarm had woken. It was one of the last songs. But so all I focused on when I did that song was what it meant to me personally. The things that have happened to me in my life where I felt rejected and I felt left and alone and hurt and loved or unloved, and I lived it. I just lived it. That's the best I could do. And so I think it turned out to be authentic, and I think it's okay.
No, that's what I was going to say, because like I said, I know a lot of these songs, or at least half of them, and when listening to the album, it never felt like I was listening to. It felt like your own. It felt like it fitted. So I will say that.
That's the thing you say. Thank you. That's the nice thing.
No, that's always. That's why I asked the question, because with those very famous songs, you always wonder how it will sound and if they can kind of put their own touch on it. And yeah, I think you managed to do so. So that's a good thing. But one thing, kind of with what you mentioned about the male vocalist side of that song, were there any other kind of musical gold in a way that you found during that trip, in a sense of
gold?
Yeah, that's not a good explanation, but kind of those stories or kind of those moments of musical history. Were there a couple during those travels?
Yeah, let's just go back to Tell Mama, which is the other thing. So that's a little bit of gold right there. It was another one-take song. It was the very last song we did. We were jamming. It was fabulous. And Clayton Ivey is one of the original Muscle Shoals guys.
Sure.
He actually played on Now, don't get me wrong, but I think he played on the original Rather Go Blind. And I think he's played on Tell Mama too. But after we did Tell Mama, he just said, that's the best version I've ever heard. Right. That's gold, isn't it? Somebody who's actually a part of that whole scene and who did it would say that is a huge, huge compliment. And that's musical gold, because these songs are gorgeous. They're gorgeous. Sure. And they're part of my history. And another thing on a personal note, I told you how much my mom loved Elvis and everything, even though she's a country fan. She told me one time, she said, your Aunt Priscilla, she loves the fast blues. She said, but I love the slow blues. And so a lot of these songs are the slow blues, which is what my mom loved. I remember the songs by the country artists that were done in blue-eyed soul thing. So it all comes together, and it's, makes me remember.
Well, one last artist I want to get into then, because you mentioned the slow blues, and this is somebody who I kind of discovered only in the last couple of years, but Wright. So what was it about his kind of style or that interested you?
First of all, there's a song by Obi Wright that I've been doing live.
Okay.
Because a very special couple I love in Mobile, Alabama, Barry and Judy. They're an older couple who would come to see me all the time. They're huge fans, wonderful people. They came to me one time when I was playing in Mobile and said, would you please learn this song? And it turned out that Etta James did a version of it. So I was happily doing this song for them. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I can't think of the name of it right now. My mind is going.
No worries.
Once I started singing that song, you've got something on your mind, and I fell in love with that song. And to me, I guess it comes from the 50s. It's more romantic, when the music was all recorded in one room. It wasn't until later that I discovered the original artist was Wright. So, yeah. And then I did a show with these German guys, this German band, and found out that the bass player had done several gigs with Obi.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, wow.
So there's that connection. But I think in relation to the album, I did not deliberately choose an Obi song. I just chose songs that spoke to me, and it was an oral experience. Where hearing the music, and it was about connecting with that. And again, the primary consideration was just that it was an artist of that genre who was in that studio.
But so now that the album is done and released and everything, is that what you're looking for in a sense, to have people have that similar connection like you had with those songs? Is that what you kind of want your audience to get out of it?
I remember my sweet mama years ago, she told me, she said, someday people are going to be ready for real music again. And so I guess in a way, I certainly wouldn't expect anybody to get the same thing I got out of it, but I would just hope that it's real to them, and that it brings joy, and that it may open their eyes to something they didn't know about before. Because even though I grew up in the middle of all this, there's lots of things I didn't know. It's like seeing the forest for the trees, or being a prophet in your own land. It's a journey. It's a journey, and it's a wonderful journey in every way that we got to go on this trip.
And so finally then, realistically, when do you expect to be able to go out and sing again for people?
I think that's really up in the air right now. And, my manager is saying a lot of artists are waiting until 2021, early 2021, to book. My fiance and I had tickets to see Eric Clapton for June, and they've rescheduled it for June of next year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it may change, but it seems like that's what a lot of people are, end of this year, first of next year, hopefully. But when you think about it, Robin, about as a singer, and I've always said this, in the early days when I used to have to perform in venues where there was cigarette smoking, the person singing is not only vulnerable in terms of their emotional being and opening themselves up, the person singing has their mouth open the whole time. You're completely open to everything that comes in.
Sure.
All that we've learned about the things that happened with this pandemic, I think we're going to have to be extra, extra careful about our interaction. I'm wondering how this is going to play out, but Lord have mercy. I miss all the hugs. I miss being in a close environment and that energy that happens between people, because you can't really recreate that on an internet situation.
Right.
It's wonderful that people are doing online concerts and talking. It's great that we have something, but there's nothing that can take the place of real human interaction. And I'm hoping that science and the world will figure out a way that we can get back on it soon.
Exactly.
And I'd love to be out there playing for everybody. And I was so excited to do the tour to promote the album and do all these wonderful shows and have a full band and everything. So we're hoping and praying that we can get back there soon.
Yeah, we'll stay positive and hope that everything will work itself out.
Sounds good.
Lisa, thank you very much for your time.